Sir?
On the exam, is there gonna be terminology questions, so we need to start writing those types down?
Conceivably.
Okay.
I don't usually use them exactly, but in some cases, if you don't know the terminology, you can't understand the question. Tell me about our sample problem.
We had 9,000 buyers.
Oh, okay.
And,
What's the demand equation?
912 minus 4.53.
And
We're on
so,
the sample problem. And that was 17 sellers
17?
at negative 147 plus 3.6.
Okay.
3.6.
3.6. Okay. How many of you worked this? Wow.
I thought goes enough to do for the appendix problems.
Wow. Then work it for next time and we'll do it then. Okay? This is exactly what we started off today with. Just plug the numbers in and crank through it. Okay? Remind me next class too. Incidents of tax. Appendix B has three different problems: the mathematics of equilibrium, the consumer surplus, and this, the incidence of a tax. I'm going to go through this one a little briefly, but make sure that you've done some of these before next class. The general rule is this. We say here's a market with a demand curve and a supply curve, and the initial equilibrium price is, let's say, $4, and the equilibrium quantity is 200 units. And we say what we're going to do, the government is going to impose a tax on the sellers, a sales tax, of $1 per unit. So we have a tax on sellers of $1 per unit. What will that do to equilibrium first? What will happen? Which curve will be affected? The supply curve, because we're sellers. And what does a tax do to the supply curve? It's going to decrease it because this is like increasing their cost of production. Okay? But look at the way we're going to decrease it. We're going to decrease it by shifting the supply curve vertically by the amount of the tax. And so here's what's happening. It used to be to sell 200 units before they would produce them, they wanted $4 a piece. Now, in order to cover the tax, to do this many, they need $5 a piece. So we go up to where $5 is and say that's where they are now, so their supply curve has shifted vertically by the amount of the tax. So this distance here, this distance here is $1. You tracking with me okay there? Keep the logic straight. As a result of this shift in the supply curve, what's happened to equilibrium?
It's going to change.
It has gone over to here. Now I'm going to make up the numbers here, but let's say that at the new equilibrium, the price is $4.40, and their sales have dropped to 150 units. You've got to keep a real close eye on that new equilibrium. That's the key to everything. Okay. What I want you to figure out for me is how much tax is paid by the buyer and the seller per unit.
Buyer is 40 cents and the seller would be 60 cents.
Yeah, that's assuming he sells it at 440, right?
Yeah, well that's his equilibrium. Yeah.
He could charge more though, that way he's not.
They'll lose sales. This is an equilibrium.
Oh,
This is a
okay.
market equilibrium. Yeah. This is truth, insofar as we know truth. Okay? What happened to the buyer? He's paying 40 cents more for every unit. I didn't ask you how many did he buy. I said, how much of the tax per unit is he paying? 40 cents more for every one he buys. So if he's buying 40 cents, and that 40 cents is the change in the equilibrium price, that's what the buyer pays, then if the whole tax is $1, the seller pays the rest. Okay so far? Now let's ask, what is the total tax paid by the buyer and the seller? What is it? How much total tax is the buyer going to pay now?
You said total tax of the buyer?
Yeah. How much total tax does he pay?
Oh, that'd be 40 cents times
He
20.
pays 40 cents each.
Yeah.
How much in total?
Oh, 40.
He bought 150 units. So he pays 40 cents times 150 units. Let's go ahead and write that this way. So he pays $60. How much tax does the seller pay? 60 cents a unit.
$90.
Still paying selling 150 units, so he pays $90. Okay? And how much tax did government collect?
150.
The two together. Which is, it should be fairly obvious. If it's $1 a piece tax and they sell 150 of them, bingo, $150.
So the seller is still making a profit? Oh,
Well, we assume he is or you wouldn't sell them. Yes, sir.
You go back to the sellers, that kind of got lost there. If it's 60 cents, down one, up one, the middle one,
This one.
yeah.
He knows we know he's paying 60 cents each. And we know he's selling 150 of them.
Okay, that's 100.
So 60 times 150. Good. Good. Yes, ma'am?
So the only question I have is, for the 440, I understand that that's the new equilibrium set by the tax, right? So, you just made up that number?
Yeah.
Okay, but on a graph, you would actually give us the side numbers.
Well said. I will give you these numbers.
Okay.
Or if I draw a graph and ask you to fill it in, I'll accept your opinion of, well, that's really $4.42. Yeah, okay.
Okay.
So in order for that company to maintain their quantity demanded, what would they have to do?
They'd have to eat the whole tax themselves. Okay, so far? This is the first part of this thing. You got this down, the rest is not bad. Everybody comfortable with this? Here's where it goes a little squirrely. Remember these numbers. I'm going to erase this now. Has everybody got the information?
What does that say? Tax on sellers F1 unit? Is that what it says? Of
$1.
The tax on sellers of $1 per
Sorry, I
unit.
didn't see the.
And the supply curve goes right up into the slide. All right. Take a look at this and tell me how this is going to be a little bit different.
Inelastic.
We'll use the same numbers just for fun. This was $4. This was $200. And now I'm going to shift the supply curve by $1, okay?
Inelastic.
So I'm going to go vertically up to here. There's my new supply curve. And there's my new equilibrium. At $4.90.
Buyers willing to pay more.
First thing to notice, look at the shape of the demand curve. The demand curve has become steeper. closer to vertical. When the demand curve is very steep like that, we call it inelastic. Now what that means is when the price goes up,
The buyers are still willing to pay the tax.
the buyers are still willing to pay a high price to buy almost as much as they did. In fact, let's say that the new quantity here is 190 units.
Could this be something like gas?
Gasoline,
Okay.
booze, cigarettes.
Booze?
Now, question one, how much tax per unit is the buyer paying?
Okay.
Change in equilibrium price. The buyer is paying 90 cents tax, so the seller's paying what? The other 10 cents. How much total tax is the buyer paying? 90 cents times 190 units.
171.
$171, and so the other $19 is paid by the seller. So in this case, the incidence of the tax falls mostly on the buyer because he has a very inelastic demand curve. He needs the product. If we taxed medicine, prescription medicine, you and I would pay almost all the tax. You with me okay so far?
What instance would this be in? If the demand was almost vertical, what does that mean?
It's inelastic.
Inelastic.
The demand is inelastic, buyers have to have it.
Okay.
How much tax did government collect?
$189.
Government collected $1 apiece times 90. They collect $190 tax. Instead of over here, how much did they collect?
150.
150. So if you're government, which one do you want to tax? This product or that product?
That product.
That one.
That product. Again, booze, cigarettes.
Stuff you need to live.
Nothing.
I said stuff you need to live, like medicine.
Well, yeah, if you could. Of course, you try to tax medicine, we put you out of business. But Alabama used to have sales tax on exempt clothing from sales tax. Because they said that was a necessity. It wasn't fair to make people pay a tax on that. See, we don't tax you on what? Food or medicine in Florida. Now, prepared food we'll pay you tax on. But if it's just plain food out of the grocery store, there's no tax on that. Why not? Because that's an unfair burden on very low income people. They've got to have that food. Why are you making them pay tax on it? How are we doing so far?
Wait, what did you said that there's no tax on food?
Nope, not on raw food, unprepared food, groceries.
Really?
If you buy something in a restaurant where it's been prepared, then there is tax.
So how come the,
Publix does have a small fee that they charge you. I forget what it is on the receipt.
Okay.
I mean, it's not a federal tax or a state
just
tax. It's just their little surcharge. that Publix
There is a
has.
tax, but it's not by the federal government.
Yeah.
Yeah.
so then
Back in the day, before we had computers, if you were a cashier at Publix, you had to know every product in the store, whether it was taxable or not taxable. And you were ringing it up each of them.
You still got paid the same.
Still got paid minimum wage.
Yep.
So
Other
then-
questions?
Yeah, I have a question. If the food at like grocery stores in general isn't taxed because it's unprepared, how come the groceries on military bases are so much less expensive? I thought it was because they didn't have any taxes.
We don't pay taxes, period, on military bases. Does that make sense? So when you go to like the PX or something, I don't pay taxes on anything.
That's absolutely true, and I don't know to what other degree those groceries are subsidized. Part of the cost is borne by the government. Okay. I know that as a military dependent, I remember the first time as a child I went in and bought a comic book for 10 cents, and the guy said that'll be 11 cents. Why? You know, tax. I was hostile about it. Who do you think you are? Just a kid. Okay, let's do one other one, and then I'll let you go. And maybe we don't even have to do it. Maybe you can just tell me generally what's going to happen. Here's the demand curve.
Elasticity.
The flatter the curve, the more elastic it is.
The more the buyer.
The
Buyers are
steeper the
not
curve, the
willing to
more
pay the tax.
inelastic it is, okay? Don't forget the terms. So now, supply goes up. This is the tax. But what happened to the price?
Price goes up.
Price went to here.
Oh,
So the price went from
wrong one.
this much to this much. Little bitty price change. Huge drop in quantity. What happened?
People aren't willing to pay the tax.
Nobody's
People say, you put that tax on me, I'll buy some other damn thing. Don't give me that tax. I don't need it that damn bad. And so now when you raise the price even just a little bit, they say, I'll go buy something else. Imagine we put a sales tax on Coke, but not Pepsi. What would you buy?
Pepsi.
I hope so. If you said Coke, we're going to send you to Florida State. Okay? Launch him shot. Every chance I get. All right, anything else? You can do the numbers if you see them. If you'll go back to Appendix B, it's got exactly these kind of problems. Appendix D, same thing. That's my subtle hint to say it might be on a test. Okay? How about Appendix A and Appendix C? Anybody? You doing okay with that? Appendix A, everybody's done with Appendix A? Hopefully you're pretty well done with Appendix. How about Appendix C? You should be pretty well done with that. Anybody done Appendix E? For next week.
Can we do one on appendix C?
On Appendix C, you got one there?
Is there appendix D?
You have one you want to look at?
Yeah, I think it's one we might have done before, pizza and hamburgers.
Okay, hang on. Can I erase this? Okay, Appendix C, which question is it?
10,
Appendix C, number 10. Tell me about it.
pizza and hamburgers are substitutes in consumption.
Okay?
The price of hamburgers rise. At the same time, the cost of producing pizza decreases.
Okay. Decreases on the cost of production for pizza?
Producing pizza decreases.
Decreases. So the price of hamburgers goes up, and we know that they are substitutes in production. I'm sorry, substitutes in consumption. You buy one or the other. And the cost of production for pizza decreases. First thing you got to do is read that question real slow and make sure this is what you get out of it. If there's substitutes in consumption, you buy pizza or you buy hamburger. If the price of hamburger goes up, what happens in the pizza market? You buy more pizza. So the demand for pizza increases. At the same time, if it costs less to produce pizza, what happens to the pizza market?
Wait, say that again?
Supply goes up.
What's the question?
Cost of production for pizza falls.
Oh,
The
supply goes up.
The supply curve for pizza, since it's cheaper to produce, we produce more, increases. You've got to get to this point in the question before you do anything else. You've got to recognize which curves are affected and which way they're moving. Once you get to this, hopefully the rest of it's pretty easy. Increase in demand makes price rise and quantity increase. An increase in supply makes price fall and quantity increase.
Price is included. Quantity is.
You know, quantity does the same thing, so that's going to happen. You know, get different things for price, so we don't know what's going to happen, and that's our answer. And I mean, there is a sequence, a logical, step-by-step sequence on these questions. Follow it. Identify what's going on, identify which curves are moving in which way. Draw it out in graphs, a separate graph for each curve that moves, and then see what they have in common. The alternative is to read the question, go to the answers, and sign up for the course next term. Okay.
What's C10? Question, is that a question?
Appendix C, question 10.
There you go.
So you start giving me a hard time in class, you know what's going to happen? I'm going to start making other little notes up here that you won't know what they mean, and neither will I, and you'll worry about them. I get bored real easy. Okay? All right, be safe. I'll see you next week. Bye.